This session is geared really towards folks that have already been piloting this past year. There were some refinements that were made to some of the outcomes and the indicators and some new information that is available for you this year. So the session will be geared towards those folks. So if you've already gone through, that introductory section in the morning, that's great. If you've been piloting this year, that's perfect. Like, this session is specifically for you. And so some of the things that we're going to be covering are some adjustment to the implementation plan to take into account this more challenging year that we've all just been through. Some information about the refinements at the outcome level and to indicators. A reference to the skills continuum as well, a few modifications that were made there, information about the curriculum guides, some additional resources that you might find helpful, and then a final update just on a transition in terms of layout for PowerSchool and the way that that was done. So if there are any questions throughout, there's only 12 of us, feel free to pop in, chime in, ask a question, or as Matt mentioned, pop it in the chat. And he can field some of the more direct answers, but we've got the time in order to really dive in if that's what you're looking for there. Okay. So the latest documents, we will provide you with a link to all of the at-a-glance documents for the 7 and 8 that are going to be in effect this coming year. So you'll get those at the end of the session, and then we're starting to put them up onto the curriculum site. And that's curriculum.novascotia.ca. So you'll find the information transitioning there as soon as humanly possible. And a reminder that those folks that have been using the pilot site, so that's the 7 and 8 pilot site that was up since the original pilot phase before we're moving into implementation, that site is going to remain this year. There's a lot of information there. A number of teachers had requested that remain active, and so that information will still be there, but all of the newer documents will go to the curriculum.novascotia.ca site. So in terms of implementation, this was originally a shorter plan. We've made a slight adjustment here. So in the 2020 to 2021 school year, so starting in this September, all schools that had started on an implementation process as of last year are going to continue doing that. So it's almost as if the implementation plan, has a repeat of last year. So those folks, there may have been a few teachers in your school that were implementing, and then this is an opportunity to have another year to do so. If you, the teacher in the school, felt that you wanted to, take on another course, or someone else was coming on, you are, of course, well within your means to do that. Not a problem. Just I would communicate that with the program coordinator. And then that would be perfectly fine. New schools as of 2020 to 2021 are welcome. However, this will be at the discretion of the regional centers for education. Across the province, a number of RCEs had been offering professional development and professional learning throughout last year up until March. And so the regions are in various stages of that professional development. And so just depending on how they're able to assist you, they may have some requirements or suggestions in terms of welcoming new schools, but of course you are welcome. And then professional learning is going to continue this year, and that will be done through the regional centers for education, and sessions like this that will be recorded and posted, and some additional videos about how to read, say the curriculum guides or the new at-a-glance documents, that kind of stuff. That will be available for people to use. It's also of note that the developmental evaluation done through St. FX is going to be continuing as well, and so we're going to be able to take more information back this year about how things are going for you as teachers, how things are going for students, administrators, regional centers, and what you might need moving forward. So that information will continue, and we're happy to take in any suggestions or recommendations that you have so that we can make the process even better. And then in 2021 to 2022, so not this September, but the following September, that implementation plan will continue. So grade 7 and 8 teachers everywhere across the province are being asked to implement 2 renewed courses or more if they choose. And of course, we fully recognize, if you're at a larger school and you have the dream job of teaching just Science 8, let's say, it's not going to be possible for you to implement 2 renewed courses. You know what I mean? You have that one grade 8 course. So of course, that's as per the organizational structure that works. But again, that 2 courses is sort of like the goal there. However, if you would like to dive in, if you feel that you're ready, that is perfectly fine and up to you. And then in 2022 to 2023, that's when full implementation will be occurring. So that is all across the province, all 7 and 8 subjects, all teachers that are teaching those courses. That curriculum is going to be the curriculum for the province for 7 and 8 at that time. Okay. At this point, I am going to stop, though. If there are any questions about that, please, again, feel free to pop them in the chat, and Matt can field some of them, or if there are any that are popped in there, we're happy to take a look. So in terms of the refinements to the outcomes, so this, first of all, don't panic. There aren't any courses where you're going to be walking in September, and expecting to be teaching, like Science 7, and you walk in and all of a sudden it's an entirely different course with entirely different outcomes. That's not the case at the outcome level. Instead, there were a number of courses that were put out in 2017, the 2017-2018 year in development there, that had yet to have an application of the feedback that we had received. And so those courses have gone through and had a little bit of a review and a refinement. So outcome changes in terms of the wording. So there were sort of 2 things that were occurring here. So one of them was a wording modification, and sometimes it was a fix for grammar. So the skill and the concept are still the same, but it just, as a sentence, makes a little bit more sense. And sometimes it was an addition of wording that might help to open or broaden up that outcome. So for example, if you're looking at evidence for something, the outcome might say a specific type of evidence and other. You know what I mean? Just to open that up a little bit. There was also a few changes to the skills. So originally in the writing teams, our understanding of what it meant to sort of teach through the skills, the matching of the skill and the concept didn't align as harmoniously as could have been done. And so an adjustment has been made there. So perhaps instead of analyzing something, it might be evaluating that. So the concept remains the same, but the approach from a skill perspective is slightly adjusted. Again, that happened not often. So this is, again, a handful of these changes throughout, like the general 7 and 8 in its entirety. Or it could have been a change of both. So it would have been a grammar fix plus a skill adjustment. But again, no really major changes here. I would say the one that had most of the revisions would have been the Social Studies 7 and Social Studies 8. A lot of those outcomes were just sort of refined in terms of viewpoint and perspective. And so that would be the one that I would just take a look at if you are a teacher of either of those subjects. So for refinements at the indicators, this is where you may see a little bit more, and we had more opportunity to apply some changes and feedback that we had gathered from teachers. And so here, the at-a-glance document on the right-hand side over here, the indicators down at the bottom. So 3 types of changes that may have occurred. Well, 4, I guess. 1, nothing. Next is skill scaffolding to support the outcome. So you may have found in your at-a-glance documents when you were going through that, you might have been, implementing something at the outcome level, and all of your indicators were implement, implement, implement. So instead, in terms of helping students learn how to implement, that didn't necessarily make as much sense. And so there were recommendations put forward to have skills scaffolded to support that outcome. And so you might start by, in this case, comparing and questioning and selecting and investigating and analyzing in order to be able to really formulate a personal and critical question at the outcome level. So you're learning how to do these things in relation to that outcome. There was a few sections as well where the language at the indicator level sounded very much like a task. So you would need to implement this or analyze this, and it felt very direct and as if there was only sort of one way to do that. But some of the feedback that we had heard was that teachers had this really great idea of something that some learning experience that they were doing with their students in the classroom, or the students came in with these great ideas or this motivation to undertake some form of learning, and the outcome or the indicator here just still felt like it didn't quite allow them to do that. And so that language was shifted to sound a little bit more open. And I do have an example on the next slide here that will help to demonstrate that. And the final thing that occurred was a reorganization of the order. So again, those indicators are just suggestions for how you might explore the outcome, in a deep way. But of course, if you are an experienced teacher and you know your students well and you've got it, that's great. If you're new to the course or new to the curriculum and you wanted to take a look at how you might do that, those indicators were reorganized. So in some occasions, the skill complexity starts off with sort of like an easier onboarding. We'll select, maybe we'll question, maybe we'll compare, and then as we get down the list, it starts to become a little bit more complex. And so you're better able to, say, investigate or analyze after you've had an opportunity, in this example, to maybe compare or learn how to question or learn how to select. And so this is an example. So on the left-hand side here is the indicators for English language arts that would have been in effect this past year. The outcome was analyze accuracy, reliability, validity, and bias of information. And here is an example at the indicator level where the indicators are all saying, analyze the accuracy, analyze the reliability, analyze the validity. And so in this case, it does sound both like a task and also a lack of skill scaffolding there. And so if we look at that refinement over here on the right, so you may start off by comparing the reliability of information from a variety of sources. This allows it to be a little bit more open. You can explore this indicator, for the duration of the year, if this was something that the students really benefited from, or you felt that it was appropriate. Comparing the reliability of information makes it a little bit more open. You might be able to have some cross-curricular learning if that works for you. And the next is, and I think perhaps the finest example of what we may need in today's day and age, but question the validity of information in a range of communication forms. And that gives it a little bit more purpose now, rather than it sounding like a task. You're learning how to question the validity. So if something is out there and there are arguments there may be things that are not true, helping to support that argument. And so you're going in and determining how you might question the validity of that information. A particular favorite of mine is investigating how bias influences the message of communication forms. It gives it a little bit more purpose. And then, of course, we're analyzing information for accuracy. So those are the types of changes that you're going to see. On occasion, it was, evaluate this, analyze this, rather than like what are you evaluating it for? What are you analyzing it for? And so you'll find those adjustments that were in there as well. And again, feel free to pop questions in the chat. This presentation will be a little bit shorter than an hour. But it's to provide opportunity for you to sort of dive in and take a look at some of those at-a-glance documents and the guide samples that we have for you. And if there's any questions there, we're happy to take them. We'll be here, of course, for the hour. And another refinement that we put together here was at the skills continuum. So originally this document, had two, it was like a double-decker style document that had the skills definitions across the top and then strategies along the bottom. And it was particularly complex. And this isn't a document that you would need to access at all times or commit it to memory, but it is helpful if if you're looking at ways to plan and you were searching for an inclusive way to make sure that everyone in your classroom was, say, investigating along the lines of the same concepts or what have you. And so we've hopefully made it a little bit more intuitive to navigate this document. So in the top left-hand corner here, this is a general statement. So again, those indicators are suggestions. So if you felt that analyzing, your students weren't yet ready for that analysis step, but instead you were looking for a different skill to use, it was a little bit more challenging to really understand, like, what is at the heart? What is this skill about? And so in this document, there is like a one-sentence definition that is clear and concise for each of the skills. So in this case, investigation is the collection of information and the communication of new understandings. So that is across all of the subjects. And it makes it a little bit easier for you, the teacher, to say, I know that's the one, we're going to start there, and then that will help us make our way over to the next skill that we think is appropriate. And just across from that is an example. So we've pulled out examples from a variety of different subjects just to have there. There's one example for each of the skills. In this case, learners will investigate ways for preventing the spread of communicable diseases, which is particularly timely. But there are examples there just so that you can see ways that indicator or that outcome might be written. And so those examples are found there. We tried to pull out the sort of the best examples that sounded the most open that could be used. And so within the P to 12 portion there, we heard some feedback as well about confusion. The idea of investigating or the idea of reflecting, let's say, that is complex, and we've put out a definition. When this document originally came out, it did have the skill words themselves used within the skill definition. So you might say reflect on recognized perspectives, or reflect on the relationships. And that was the use of that word in a more colloquial way. And so people were like, well, do I have to then jump over to reflect and then go through that reflection stage? And so we've gone through and we have replaced that language, or that word specifically, sorry, with a word that better makes sense. So in that case, that reflection is really about considering. We want you to consider the relationships or what have you. And so you'll find that change there. The definitions themselves and the purpose, like what the original intent of those skills were, has not changed. It's just that wording language to cut down on that confusion there. There are a few examples though where skill word is embedded within the definition. In this case example, organizing compare details. You can use that skill definition of compare. You don't need to use all of the components there all the way through, but whatever you think that your learners might need, there's a lot of flexibility there. And remember, like by the end of grade 7 or by the end of grade 8, you're hoping that they're working towards independence of this skill. And so each time you see that skill, it's not necessarily that you need to instruct, here's a mini lesson on asking and revising, here's a mini lesson on locating relevant details. You don't have to go through all of that time. We know it's not, prescriptive, and there is that art of teaching, right? And your students may benefit more from a detailed dive in at one section of this rather than others over the course of the year. So we've hoped to make that a little bit more open for you. And in the folder that Matt will be sharing, the skills continuum, the updated version will be on there. Some new information for you. So curriculum guides are getting released. Within these guides, this will be a little bit different than previous curriculum guides that you would have encountered before, where I was looking at one just last week that was 600 pages long, which is a considerable and robust amount of information. And so these guides will just contain general information, a little bit about the competencies, about what it may look like in the classroom, and the information from your at-a-glance documents. So that's your outcomes, indicators, skill definitions, guiding questions, those concepts. That is all exactly the same as it may appear on the at-a-glance document. The in addition portion here, though, is the example learning experiences. A lot of times when we went out to the schools that were in the pilot stage, a lot of people were talking about, really great things they were doing in their classroom, but didn't necessarily realize that's perfect. Like what you're doing is great. And so they were looking just to see like how might it look? How do the competencies align? How do the skills, like how do we use that? And so within the curriculum guides, there is, for every outcome, one of those indicators, there is an example learning experience. Now, we know that learners are all different, and the motivations all across the province of the things in your community that you might want to explore are going to be different. And so those learning experiences are going to be open. They will require you to refine them. It's not really a how-to, but it is an example to show you how the skills might be able to be explored as we come to know the concepts. And so one indicator per outcome for each of the courses. Okay, and so this is an example. Where this differs from previous curriculum guides, this is written more from the learner perspective. And so it's really what they are doing. And so you'll find, the things that the teacher is expected to do is more in terms of a facilitation and setting up and like really providing opportunities for student voice in the classroom and facilitating discussions. And so it is written from that learner perspective, what they will be doing. And then this is a screen capture, just one section of a curriculum guide here. And so a few things I just wanted to point out for you, though. This is one of the things that people had a little bit of questions about, how does, in this case, critical thinking, how do I know? Again, when we went out to schools, people provided great examples that they were doing in their classroom already of setting people up for like development of that communication or critical thinking or creativity or innovation. Like they provided great examples of that. And so this hopefully just helps to reconfirm the things that you were doing in your classroom anyway. And so in this case, you know, the example is that the teacher's going to facilitate some discussions about advocacy actions and really considering this as they are, this is partway through a learning experience, but as they come to identify relationships in relation to whatever they were doing. And so by setting them up for that discussion and really considering these questions as they are working through that advocacy action learning experience, that sets them up for the development of critical thinking. There is also an evidence of learning section down here at the bottom with just that skill component bolded out there. Again, they are just suggestions. You as the teacher are still going to set the criteria for success, you know, hopefully with your students in there. But we needed to include that in there just as a possible section where you may want to collect some evidence. And again, there are examples for observations and conversations, more so than products, but there are examples of products in there. We're hoping though that this, like if you read through one of these, you'll probably see a lot of similarities to things that you were doing in the classroom already. But if there was a skill that you maybe were uncertain about how it might flow, there are examples in the guides that could be used for you to inform future planning. And again, so there'll be steps or descriptions just broken down in terms of one sort of section of the skill components. Not every skill component is engaged throughout each of the learning experiences. We did with the curriculum consultants in the development of this, you know, where they made sense. It made sense to gather and select information here. And so this is a representation of that, a link to the competencies, your sample evidence, and then the skills language. So that information will be in there. For those courses that are offered in French, they've been sent for translation, and these guides were developed with English program services and French program services at the same time, in conjunction with African Canadian services and Mi'kmaq services branch as well. So those, like all of those considerations were there while these were being developed. And also we made a point to make it a little bit easier to provide an opportunity for cross-curricular links. And so you'll see within the guide as well, a bolded section that says, hey, if you're investigating bias, you might want to dive in on the specific concept from social studies or science or what have you. So that information will be there as well. We do have, oh, sorry, Matt, I'm just going to pop in there. Anything from the chat there that we needed to bring to light or anything that we'd like to share?
Thanks, Brian. No questions, but so far we have some very positive comments about the changes being made. So that's really great to see.
Oh, good. And also, like, we are hoping for feedback as well over the course of this year about the guides themselves. So if there's something that you're like, no, like in reality, this is not how this works, send that information in, because we need to know that so that we can refine those guides and make them usable, and also help to inform the development of guides as we go back to the 4 to 6 to put those suggestions into action there as well, and to refine these ones. So please, we want to hear that feedback. That's the only way that we can ensure that the curriculum exists here. The curriculum documents that we put forward are nothing until teachers breathe life into them. And so, like, your voice carries great weight in terms of making these useful. So please, at any chance you can, provide that information back to us. There are some examples here that, or some resource examples that I wanted to just make you aware of. The first one here is resources to support the renewed Science 7 and Science 8. So these would have been through pilot for sections last year, and are now available on the Moodle site, which I've got the link to just on the slide after this, along with the enrollment key. So please feel free to screen capture that, because that will be very helpful for you. And so there are new student resources. And these resources are sort of small and light. They're not a 12,000 page textbook to bring with you. They are digitally available so that all students can have access to that. There are hard copies that each school will receive. Again, it will be a smaller selection of the hard copies. The digital resources are hopefully where you will dive in first. There is the opportunity to adjust the text size and to have speech to text, text to speech options in there, as well as playing videos and having image banks for exploration. There is also a teacher resource that matches the student resource. And so that is going to provide you some examples. I think what you may really enjoy in these specific resources is that, when you're looking at your curriculum document, you'll see the skills and the competencies and the concepts there. You'll also see those here in these science guides. And so, it'll be like, oh, hey, inquiry, oh, great, this is part of your investigation. Like, here is information with which you can, gather details. And so it's been done specifically to support the curriculum itself. So that information will be there for you. And that'll be available in 7 and 8 in English and in French. This is the Moodle logins. So you can access the Moodle through the GNSPES landing page. I invite you at this point, take a screen capture, take a photo of this. This slide will also be as part of the Summer Learning Academy slide deck as well. So if you don't have the opportunity to do that now, no problem. You can always find it in this presentation at that time. So when you log in on your GNSPES landing page, the Moodle will be there. You can log in with your GNSPES credentials. The course name is there, so Science 7, Science 7, sorry. And the enrollment key is there for teachers, and then the enrollment key is there for students. So the teachers will find the teacher resource. If you log in with the enrollment key for these students, you will not find the teacher resource in there. And the same thing is true for grade 8. So, within these guides, there are local content, local photos. So people will, walk out of their homes or what have you and see examples of, technology in action, and then also see that in their resource guides, their science resources as well. And so that is a particularly great thing to see in there. Also, one final just reminder here about the science resources. So in the fall of 2018, each grade 7 and 8 school across the province received like a tub of Pasco sensors. And so if you've had an opportunity to explore them, excellent. When I was piloting my classroom, we definitely use these more often than not. But there are some folks there that may not have been aware. So this is just for your knowledge. These would have been sent out again in 2018. And so within there are a variety of different sensors: temperature, conductivity, pressure, light, CO2, some renewable energy kits, current, voltage. And as well, there are 18 USB dongles to plug into a Chromebook if you needed to make that connection. If you have newer Chromebooks or a student has downloaded an app onto a phone, if it is a newer version, then it will not require the dongle. It just sort of connects. One of the beautiful things that I really liked about these sensors is that if I'm holding it and I'm next to my computer, when I go to pair that sensor, it's at the top of the list. So I click the first one. I'm not going to accidentally get a, Matt's conductivity sensor, the other part of the classroom back there. Instead, they've done it very conveniently in terms of that. So all GNSPES accounts have the Pasco SparkView app with them. There is also a link on there as well if you were looking for additional resources or help getting started with the probeware. So again, that is already been sent to the schools. They are there. They're very engaging when you are working your way through those. So that is there for you. I also wanted to provide you a little bit of information about resources that we're supporting the 7 and 8 social studies. And so social studies did go through a bit of a outcome and indicator change. And so that's why this resource is where the science one is, for release. This one is still in development and in pilot this year. And so the pilot process for this is totally voluntary. If you wanted to be a part of that, pop your name in the chat and we can carry that over to the social studies consultant. If you're interested in that, you're more than welcome to. And so this is a sample page here, the image on the right, from the pilot resource for the artifact kit on the #2 construction battalion. So along with this, so the cultural artifact kits, artifacts and student resources related to the Mi'kmaq, Acadians, African Nova Scotians, and the Gaels. In this case, the accompanying artifact is a replica of a cap badge worn by the members of the battalion. And all of these resources, the artifact kit, the texts pieces themselves, the resources, were all developed with French Program Services, African Canadian Services Branch, and Mi'kmaq Services Branch. So everyone has been through that process to look at that and really shape this resource so that everyone's voice carried weight in the development of this. And so this will result in 4 magazine-style student resources in English and in French, with accompanying teacher resource, and then 2 digital case studies per outcome as well. Also, this will already have been sent out. This was sort of sent out prior to March, but that is biographical profiles of prominent African Nova Scotians, so available in English and in French with digital copies as well. And so those, there's a few of those that are referenced in the curriculum guides as well, as an example document that you might want to go through to select supporting details in English language arts, for example. So although they are geared towards social studies, there is an opportunity there to integrate, like, that the skills focus and an inquiry focus, and be able to use this in another course, so that it doesn't just live within social studies. So that is available for teachers to review that are working with the renewed curriculum in the fall and winter of 2020 to 2021, although there is no order that one might engage with the outcomes in. The resources needed to be developed in a specific way, and so they have started with those first outcomes to be part of the first resource to be released for pilot, and then the rest are coming. And then for Social Studies 8, so this is in development for the 2022 school year. Materials are going to be available for teachers to work with, again, with the renewed curriculum in the winter and spring for 2020 and 2021. And so grade 8 is going to receive 4 magazine-style student resources with accompanying teacher resource, and again, 2 digital case studies per outcome. That'll be in English and in French. This is a sample page, just to kind of see here. Again, the skills are considered as we are working through here. So you'll find that the language will align in terms of those skill components. So in this case, you might be asked, like, oh, what information can you gather and select from this? And so this gives you a bit of the information with which you might develop or apply those skills to. And so that has been considered. But again, at any point, if you're finding that, in that previous example where, like, analyze, your students weren't quite ready for that, but maybe we need to investigate, you can still use that same information and adjust the skill as best for your students. Like, you will know them better than any curriculum document might. And so that will be available winter and spring for 2020, 2021 for pilot. I'm going to pause there. Matt, were there any comments or questions that we can explore within that? Is everyone feeling pretty good?
Just one about piloting, and maybe you can clarify this. So Neela is saying that they are a consultant, I'm guessing, supporting teachers in pilot schools, and whether that is something that we can provide these social studies resources to help support those teachers in Tri-County.
Oh, great question. So Neela, I will take your information. I'll pass it along to Amy Smith, who is the social studies curriculum consultant for this specific course in the resource development. And maybe I can put you two in touch in order to help that pilot process for those folks. It is voluntary. There's no sort of forcing people if they don't want to a pilot, but we can certainly get that information sent out. Realistically, I think that the more people that are piloting it, the more feedback we can get, and the better ability we have to make any adjustments or changes that you'd like to see. So yeah, I'm happy to take that information forward if that's all right.
Yeah, that's great, Brian. Thank you. I worked quite a bit with the grade 7 and 8 teachers in both Barrington and Maple Grove this year, and social studies in particular. It was sometimes hard to get access to information. So if we could have a look at those new resources, that would be wonderful. We really did. The teachers who had the science magazines, we really enjoyed those, and we used them a great deal. So yeah, we'd be happy to have a look at them.
Excellent, great. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I'll pass your contact info on to Amy Smith there, and I'll facilitate a connection there for you. And thank you very much for the feedback. That's excellent. And now onto the final bit of information is PowerSchool. So there has been an adjustment here. You may already have sort of observed this change, so it may not necessarily apply for you. But over the course of the our time piloting, there was an adjustment from one way that the information was laid out when you go to create an assignment. And I'll show you an example on the next slide there, but we're moving forward to finalize the rest of the courses in order to take a more streamlined look. So outcomes to these skills, updates to the outcomes were sent to PowerSchool already. And so you'll see that match your at-a-glance document when you arrive, whenever that might be. And so that will be there in PowerSchool for you. Again, that change happens over the summertime while people aren't necessarily enrolled in courses. And so that'll be ready in September. And then any changes of the at-a-glance document where the skill in the indicator level will have adjusted, that will also be updated for you as well. And then there are a handful of courses here that are shifting from that original layout to layout number 2. And I'm just going to show you an example of what this looks like. And I will just apologize, I suppose, that these outcomes that you are seeing on the screen are not updated with the new. Those, even I don't have access to what that will look like when they are sent there. So this is a screen capture of what you would have seen in class this year. So on the left-hand side here, we have an example. This looks like it is from science. So you've got the outcome in yellow, and then any of the indicators that were, or the skills at the indicator level were set up underneath. So one of the things that occurred here when you went to print a report, if you were looking to see how a particular student was doing in relation to analyzing, the information from Analyze here with the first outcome wasn't able to speak to or connect to the information from Analyze underneath the second outcome. And so that didn't necessarily align with the pedagogy of what we were hoping for there. And so a refinement was done. So this was sort of a programming issue in terms of how the information was organized under its like parent outcome. And so instead on the right-hand side, you'll see the refined view. So this has the outcomes listed, right? So from start to finish, the outcomes there in yellow, they're all together. And then so when you're creating an assignment, so let's say here I was creating one about learners will formulate responses to change in Canadian society. I might click on the assignment. If I happen to be focused on a different indicator and I'm tracking the development of those skills, I can then select any of the skills from the list below. And so they will be able to be paired with that particular assignment. And if I use, say, Analyze at that point, and I use Analyze again later, I can run a report that says, well, how am I doing in relation to Analyze? And so that information will be there. And again, there is a reminder here too, if PowerSchool, you're looking for a little bit more technical how-to, like how do I create an assignment? How do I create categories and that kind of stuff? All of that information can be found on the in-school website. There's a teacher section there with PowerSchool. It's almost like a course, quote unquote, but really it's like a 30-second video. So it takes you through and just says, hey, looking to create a category, click here, and then we click here, and it's filmed as someone does it. So it walks you through that. And so that may be very helpful in terms of your, if you were looking for a little bit more technical information. But again, your courses may already have looked like this. And if not, the change will be coming out again when they apply all of those updates. I guess it would be this week. Yeah. Okay, and that, I believe, is the end of all of the new information that we have for you. We are finished with enough time there as well to, again, field any questions. And then, Matt, if you wouldn't mind, if you can pop in the link to the folder that we have for everybody. Now, this is for those folks with the GNS-PES credential. This information is getting posted onto the curriculum site. And so if you don't have a GNS-PES credential, you can find them on the curriculum.novascotia.ca site, and that information will be up there. So within this folder, you're going to find at-a-glance documents in English and in French, and that is going to be listed by subject area. So you'll find that in there. There'll be ELA, you'll find your FLA. Within science, you'll have science and science, and social studies and sciences humaines. And so those information will be there. There is also an additional folder in there that has example curriculum guides for you. And so the ones that we put in there are for social studies 7 and 8, science 7 and 8, and ELA 7 and 8. Those ones are ready for you there. And so you can take a look through them. And again, any feedback there that you can provide to help us refine that and make it more user-friendly, we'd be certainly happy to hear that. Yeah, so those examples are all in there as well. Again, they do have draft on them, just because we are looking for feedback. But all of that information will be posted on the curriculum site and those guides as well. So feel free. It looks like I'm just gonna a little check here. Yeah, okay. So it looks like Matt has posted that folder in there. Again, you'll find them all. The ones that go up on the site will match what you have there at the at-a-glance documents. And then the curriculum guides will also be up there as well.